All right, so are you ready for this? Today, we are diving deep into a concept that might just, well, completely change how you think about prophecy, about revelation. It's a big one.
I know, right.
We're talking about the promised consoler, and, it's deeply embedded in, like, Christianity, right? But we're going to go way beyond the mainstream here.
Yeah.
We've got two awesome sources for this deep dive. First, there's an encyclopedia entry from a Spiritist website, and then we're also looking at a section from Allan Kardec's The Gospel According to Spiritism. So we're really getting into how Spiritism sees itself as like the actual fulfillment of this ancient promise.
It really is fascinating how one idea can act as like a bridge between, traditional Christian thought and then this whole other worldview of Spiritism.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to do today, starting with like the biblical roots, where did this all begin? Then we're going to look at how different branches of Christianity interpret it. And then we're going to do a full-on dive into the Spiritist perspective.
Should be a wild ride.
I am so excited about this, especially how the Spirit of Truth and, potentially even Jesus himself, like, play into all of this. It's going to be good.
Well, to really grasp how complex this idea is, we really need to start with that biblical foundation, right? The word paraclete, it's Greek, it means advocate or comforter, and we find it in the Gospel of John, specifically when Jesus is, well, getting his disciples ready for, when he's going to leave them.
Oh, yeah, John 14. It's like heavy stuff. Jesus is telling them, that he's going to ask God to send another paraclete. But the thing is, right, there's a lot that this passage just doesn't answer. Like, who is this paraclete?
Yeah.
Exactly. When are they going to show up? And, most importantly, like, what are they going to do?
And it's that lack of, clarity. That's why we see so many interpretations, like across all these different religious traditions.
So let's unpack those different interpretations then. Let's start with, well, Judaism.
Okay, so in Judaism, they don't, recognize the New Testament, right? So their understanding of this whole paraclete concept is pretty different. It's more metaphorical, like they emphasize the importance of each person's good deeds. That's like their form of advocacy in front of God.
So it's less about waiting for like some specific figure and more about your actions, kind of, like speaking for you on a cosmic level.
Yeah, exactly. Your choices, what you do, that becomes like your strongest advocate, in a spiritual sense at least.
That's really interesting. So, okay, what about traditional Christianity then? How do they understand the paraclete?
All right, so most Christian denominations, they identify the Paraclete with the Holy Spirit, right? The third person of the Trinity. They believe the promise was, well, at least partially fulfilled at Pentecost, when the disciples received the Holy Spirit.
Oh, right. Like tongues of fire, speaking in other languages, all that. But you said partially fulfilled. So what about the rest of it? Like the rest of the prophecy?
A lot of people believe it'll be fully realized when Jesus comes back, his second coming. So for them, it's still a future event, like the culmination of that initial promise.
Okay, I'm following you. So we've got Judaism. They're focusing on like personal action. Traditional Christianity, they're looking to the Holy Spirit, both back then at Pentecost and in the future. And then we have Spiritism, which is, well, it's taking a whole different path, right?
Definitely a different approach, yeah. With Spiritism, things get really interesting. Like Allan Kardec, the guy who basically codified Spiritism, he says that Spiritism itself, the fulfillment of that Paraclete prophecy.
Hold on, so a whole movement is the consoler. How does that even work?
Well, Kardec argued that, back in Jesus' time, humanity just wasn't ready for the full truth. You know what I mean? He said there needed to be certain scientific and intellectual advancements first, kind of like setting the stage,
Well, it's like humanity had to evolve to a certain point before it could like handle this next level of spiritual understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another really important point here. Kardec, he kept saying that the name consoler, it implies a need for comfort. And, he was basically saying that traditional religion, at least as it was back then, it just wasn't fully providing that.
He's saying there was like a gap, a need for something more, and Spiritism is what fills it. That's pretty bold.
Oh, yeah. It definitely shook things up, Challenged the whole religious landscape.
Yeah.
Kardec saw Spiritism as like a third revelation, building on what Judaism and Christianity had already established.
Right. Building on, but also being something totally new. Okay, but what about Pentecost? Like, didn't all that bring about new spiritual understanding? How does Spiritism, how does it separate itself from that?
Well, Kardec's argument was that Pentecost while significant, it didn't actually bring any new teachings, right? Spiritism, on the other hand, it brings a whole bunch of new knowledge about the spirit world, you know, like where we fit in, how we keep evolving, all of that.
Okay, so new teachings for like a new stage of human evolution. Got it. Now, let's talk about that spirit of truth, because that keeps popping up. How does that fit into like the Spiritist view of this whole promised consoler thing?
So Kardec saw a strong link between the Paraclete, the Spirit of Truth, and Spiritism, right? Like they're all connected.
Yeah.
He believed that Jesus, from the spirit world, is actually leading the Spiritist movement, like actively guiding humanity towards, well, you know, greater understanding of the spiritual side of things.
Wow. Okay, so Jesus, in this view, he's not just like a historical figure. He's an active force still, you know? And the Spirit of Truth is what, like a go-between conveying his teachings?
I mean, yeah, that's a simplified way to put it, but yeah, that's the general idea. In fact, in his writings, Kardec includes several messages that are supposedly from the Spirit of Truth.
And I think you mentioned in one of these messages, the Spirit actually says it's Jesus.
There's one that's really powerful. It's, the Spirit of Truth straight up claims to be Jesus.
Wow. Okay, I got to hear this. Do you have an excerpt, maybe?
Sure. Let me see. So, the Spirit says, "As in other times I did to the misguided children of Israel, I come to you to bring the truth and dissolve the darkness. Listen. As formerly my word did, Spiritism has to remind the unbelievers that above them reigns the immutable truth. The good God, the great God who makes the plants germinate and the waves rise. I revealed the divine doctrine. As a reaper, I gathered in sheaves the good scattered in the bosom of humanity and said, 'Come to me, all you who suffer.'"
Wow. That's a lot to take in. Okay, so we've got Jesus potentially speaking through this Spirit of Truth guiding the whole movement. But, okay, if the consoler, the Paraclete, is actually Spiritism itself, like the whole doctrine, does that mean that there isn't like one individual who embodies this role?
That's exactly what Kardec argued.
Yeah.
He didn't see the consoler as like a single person, not someone alive, not a spirit, nothing like that. He saw it as the doctrine itself. You know, the teachings, the knowledge. That's what brings the true consolation.
So it's not about waiting for someone to show up and like save the day, but more about embracing this whole new way of seeing the world, seeing our purpose in it.
Yeah, exactly. And this view, it actually directly challenges that traditional Christian idea of the Trinity, right?
Right, because Spiritism is all about, you know, God's indivisibility, one God, one ultimate source.
Exactly. And while, you know, Jesus is definitely seen as a leader within Spiritism, he's not like the only one with the truth. It's presented as this collective effort, you know, a whole bunch of spirits all working together to guide humanity.
Like a cosmic team effort.
I like that, yeah. And, you know, Herculano Parish, that prominent Spiritist writer, he actually said, on the other hand, the Spirit of Truth did not say he was the exclusive holder of the truth, nor the spiritual revealer, but the guide of the works of the entire phalanx of the Consoler. Next to the Spirit of Truth, we find the entire pleiad of spiritual entities that subscribe to the message published in the introduction of the Spirit's book, and the others, which appear as authors of the numerous messages transcribed in that book, as well as in the Gospel, according to Spiritism, and in other works of the codification.
Wow, okay. So we've got this picture, right? The Consoler is the Spiritist doctrine guided by Jesus and this like whole host of spirits all working together. But what's so consoling about it? You know, where's the comfort?
Well, what Spiritism offers is this unique perspective on suffering. It teaches that understanding the reasons for suffering, you know, things like past lives, what we're supposed to be doing here, you know, our purpose, that can lead to acceptance and ultimately consolation.
So instead of asking, why me, you're asking, what am I learning from this? Like, suffering becomes, I don't know, like a catalyst for growth.
Right, exactly. And it goes beyond just understanding suffering, you know. Spiritism also gives us this clear picture of like what happens after we die and the whole process of spiritual progression. And that can bring, you know, solace and hope even when things are tough.
So life isn't just something we got to endure, but it's like a chapter in this much bigger journey of spiritual growth and evolution. And yeah, that can definitely be comforting.
It is. And for Spiritists, that true consolation comes from the enlightenment that the doctrine offers. Knowledge itself becomes the source of comfort.
It's like finally figuring out like a puzzle that's been driving you crazy, that aha moment. It brings peace, you know?
Yeah.
A sense of like resolution.
Exactly. And that's, you know, that's just the beginning of what Spiritism has to offer. So, we've been talking about how Spiritism sees itself as that fulfillment of the promised consoler and how that connects to this spirit of truth. But uh, there's still a pretty big question, right? Like, how do those teachings from the spirit world, how do they actually get to us?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's one thing to say, Jesus is guiding this movement from the spirit world, but I mean, come on, how are those messages actually sent? Is it all, seances and Ouija boards?
Yeah, that's a pretty common misconception. And while, Spiritism does acknowledge, like, a bunch of different spiritual phenomena, the main way those teachings come through is through mediumship.
Mediumship. Okay, so are we talking about people, channeling spirits and then writing down, like transcribing the messages they get?
That's one way it happens, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, that's how those messages from the Spirit of Truth that we talked about earlier, that's how those were received.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. But couldn't that be a bit, I don't know, unreliable? Like, how can we be sure the messages are actually real and not just, some random spirit messing with us?
Oh, yeah, that's a totally valid concern. And that's where discernment is super important. Kardec, he always stressed how important it is to really think critically about the messages that come through mediums. He even came up with like a whole set of guidelines for figuring out, how good the communication is, how authentic it seems.
So it's not just about, blindly accepting whatever comes through. There's actual, like, verification involved. You have to analyze it critically.
Absolutely. And remember, it wasn't just Kardec getting these messages right. There are tons of accounts from other mediums who also say they got communications from the Spirit of Truth, even some claiming to be from Jesus himself.
Wow. I mean, to get a message and it's like, signed Jesus of Nazareth, that would really make you rethink how, spiritual revelation works.
It definitely challenges our preconceived notions. Yeah.
Okay, so if the consoler is like the Spiritist doctrine itself, and this knowledge is coming from the spirit world, mostly through mediums, I mean, does that mean anyone can, like, tap into this?
Well, in theory, yes.
Hmm.
Spiritism is all about, the idea that spiritual development is possible for everyone. Doesn't matter your background, what you currently believe, anything like that. It's about building that personal connection to the spirit world and seeking knowledge through prayer, through studying, and most importantly, through how you live your life, your moral conduct.
So it's not like some exclusive club, with secret rituals and stuff. It's about personal effort and, I guess, a real desire to learn and grow spiritually.
Exactly. And that focus on personal effort, it really highlights something central to Spiritism. Knowledge and understanding are super
I mean,
important.
it's not just about, like, feeling good. It's about knowing more, gaining deeper insight, about reality itself.
Yes, precisely. Knowledge is like the key to overcoming ignorance and superstition, which, Spiritism sees those as the root of a lot of human suffering. It's about, giving people the knowledge they need to make good choices, to face life's challenges with more clarity and purpose.
It's starting to make sense why they call it the consoler then. It's not just about blind faith or, just feeling comforted. It's about getting this deeper understanding of the universe, our place in it, and that knowledge itself, that becomes the comfort, the strength.
Yeah, I like that. And it's not just intellectual knowledge either. Spiritism also stresses how important it is to develop morally right alongside that intellectual growth.
So it's not enough to just have the info. You got to live it,
Yeah.
Make those principles part of your actions.
Exactly. Spiritism teaches that real spiritual progress happens when we align our thoughts, our words, and these our actions with love, with compassion, with justice, all those good things.
It's like a walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yes, exactly. And this focus on moral development, it's directly tied to the whole consoler concept because it's through those moral choices, through trying to be better people, that's how we find real lasting peace and happiness.
It's a pretty amazing idea. Like, by working to be better people, we're actually, like, fulfilling the promise of the consoler, both for ourselves and, helping everyone else too.
It definitely makes you think differently about spiritual guidance
Right.
and how it affects not just us, but the whole world.
So here's a question that's been on my mind. If Spiritism is claiming to be, like, the fulfillment of this prophecy, I mean, does that mean all the other interpretations are just wrong?
Well,
What about people who, believe the Holy Spirit is the consoler?
well, it's a tricky one. Spiritism at its heart, it acknowledges that there are other valid spiritual paths, other interpretations.
So it's not about, we have the only truth kind of thing.
Right, exactly. It's more about offering a different point of view, a different way to look at these profound spiritual concepts.
Like, we're all looking at the same mountain, but from different sides.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Each perspective can give us valuable insights, right?
Yeah.
And help us understand this whole spiritual landscape better.
That's actually, that's surprisingly open-minded. For a belief system that, is claiming to be the fulfillment of a prophecy, it's nice to see an approach that encourages dialogue and understanding instead of, just dogma and being exclusive.
Spiritism really values seeking truth through open-minded inquiry and respectful dialogue.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We started with the biblical origins of this whole promised consoler thing, looked at different interpretations, and really dug into how Spiritism fits into it. Even talked about mediumship and the spirit of truth. Is there anything else we should unpack before we move on?
I think there's one more point. It's essential to really grasping how Spiritism sees the promised consoler. And it's this. It's not just about, passively receiving knowledge, but about actually using it, putting it into practice.
So it's not just about, filling your head with info, but about actually doing something with that knowledge, making it a lived experience.
Yes, exactly. Spiritism teaches that true understanding comes from experience, from, actually living by the principles we learn.
Like the difference between reading a cookbook and actually cooking the meal. You can have all the knowledge, but until you actually do it, it's just theory.
That's a great way to put it.
So.
And just like cooking, there will be, mistakes, challenges along the way.
Yeah.
But it's through those experiences that we learn, we grow, and, our understanding becomes deeper.
It sounds like a journey then of constant learning and growth, not just some destination you reach overnight.
That's it. Exactly. It's a lifelong process of discovery and transformation. And it's that transformation that ultimately brings that lasting consolation.
So by living those principles, the principles of Spiritism, we become more compassionate, more understanding, and, just more at peace, right, with ourselves and with the world. And that's the actual fulfillment of that consoler's promise.
It's definitely a compelling perspective on how we can find, solace and meaning, even in a world that's, often full of challenges and uncertainty.
So we were saying, how Spiritism really pushes that idea of actually using the knowledge it gives you. It's not just concepts and theories. It's about actually putting those spiritual tools to work in your everyday life,
Yeah, exactly. And as we do that, as we actively take those teachings and make them part of how we act, how we interact with people, we start to see the whole world differently. Our understanding of ourselves, our connection to others, it all just deepens.
It's I don't know, getting a whole new operating system or something. Suddenly you can, process information in a different way, operate on a different level. You start to see connections you never even noticed before.
I like that analogy. And with that, heightened awareness comes, more empathy, more compassion. Instead of approaching everything with fear and judgment, we start to see things through this lens of love and understanding.
So it's not just about changing yourself, but it's about contributing to a more compassionate world around you.
Precisely. Spiritism recognizes how interconnected we all are. It emphasizes that, what we do, our actions, they have these ripple effects that go way beyond just ourselves.
Kind of like that butterfly effect, right? Where even small acts of kindness can have this huge impact, down the line. You might not even see it directly, but it creates positive change.
That's it, exactly. That's the power of, acting from a place of love and compassion. By, making conscious choices that reflect those values, we're making the world a more harmonious, more peaceful place for everyone.
It's a beautiful idea, by becoming the best versions of ourselves, we're actually helping to heal the world.
It really is. And it all circles back to that idea of the consoler, True consolation comes from knowing that we're not just here for ourselves, but to be a part of something much bigger.
It's about finding our purpose, right? Within that larger context, realizing that we each have something unique to contribute.
Absolutely. And it's not just about these big abstract ideas either, It's about actually putting these principles into practice in our everyday lives, choosing kindness instead of anger, forgiveness instead of resentment, understanding instead of judgment. All these seemingly small choices, if we make them consistently, they can have a huge impact.
It's those everyday moments then, those interactions where we have the chance to really embody those higher principles. They might seem small on their own, but together they build up to something much bigger.
Exactly. And as we keep making those choices, Well, we create this ripple effect of positivity. It spreads outwards, touches the lives of other people in ways we might never fully grasp.
Wow. So we've really come full circle here. We started with this biblical promise, explored how different groups interpret it, and now we're here in this fascinating world of Spiritism, where the consoler isn't a person or an event, but like a whole way of life, a path of constant growth and transformation.
And it's a way of life that offers profound consolation, not through, escapism or wishful thinking, but through knowledge, understanding, and actively working towards a more loving, more just world.
This deep dive has been seriously eye-opening. I feel like I have this whole new understanding of, well, spirituality and the power of human connection.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And for everyone listening, if this conversation has sparked something in you, don't stop here. Dive into Allan Kardec's work, explore all the amazing resources out there on Spiritism, or, just take some time to think about that idea of the consoler in your own life. What brings you comfort? What brings you understanding? What role do you play in creating a more harmonious world? Those are questions worth thinking about. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.